And I wasn't 100% positive this was going to end up looking decent, but I sure do like it when a plan comes together. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope everybody out there is having an awesome day. It is Saturday, March 4th here in South Georgia. Beautiful day, feels like spring, got a little breeze rolling out here. On today's video, I got some more work to do in our raised bed garden here. We need to pull some carrots. We're going to jump the gun again on some early spring planting. Maybe get some cucumbers planted. Try to figure out a good raised bed trellis for those cucumbers. Probably do some more harvesting with some spinach and some beets. A lot of fun stuff planned today, so let's get after it. Now before we dig some carrots and plant some cucumbers, let's check on a few things in the back of this raised bed plot. Want to check on our taters and then answer a few questions we got on our last video about that in-bed worm farm system. So we've got taters planted in 2 of these tall beds in the back of this plot. Now, I don't have my notes in front of me, so I don't remember exactly what each of these varieties are. I'd have to look at those. But this little double row right here is popping up really good. Won't be long before we can start pushing some of this soil back into that trench there, kind of backfilling it, healing those taters as they grow. Over here on this side, just starting to see a few popping there. I don't know if you can even see those on camera or not. There's a few little sprouts popping up there. If we scoot over to this bed here, we've got some coming up there, starting to fill in. And then I know what this variety is. This is the fingerling variety. And we had sprouts, I think last time I showed you these, but now we're starting to get some leaves. So I didn't have time to do it this past week, but hopefully early this next week I'll have time to slide over the big city of Cairo, Georgia, get me some more Nature Safe 855, and then once all these plants pop up, start growing a little more, and get about 6 inches tall or so, we'll put some of that Nature Safe 855 down kind of in between those plants, and then start backfilling that soil there, healing the taters as they grow. And then beside those tater beds, we've got this bed here where we planted some squash on the last video, and also installed this little in-bed worm farm system here. And since that video, I harvested the rest of my Brussels sprouts, and I kind of just split the scraps up between this little worm farm, our big worm farm, and our chickens over there. So I went ahead and filled this puppy up with some Brussels sprout leaves and stalks that we had from harvesting all those Brussels sprouts. I can tell already that I'm going to have to come out here every few days and keep this little mat here wet. Seems to be drying out pretty quick, but hopefully the soil here, considering this thing is buried down there pretty good, will kind of insulate things and maybe keep things from getting too hot there. So several of the comments we had on that last video had to do with the fact that this thing might get too hot being out here in direct sun. Our other worm farm is by the barn under a pecan tree where it stays relatively cool, and only time will tell here. It could very well get too hot and this system not work well for us. We'll just have to see. I'm hoping that being buried deeper like that, the soil will insulate it some. Now, we also had some of you mention that this in-bed worm farm is taking up some prime real estate in that raised bed, and indeed it is. It probably wouldn't be ideal for something that's planted real densely in a bed. It's going to work fine for squash here because squash plants get so big. Probably wouldn't be good if we were planting a whole bed of carrots, because that would take up a lot of space where we could be growing carrots. So I don't know that it's ideal for every thing that we would grow in these raised beds, but some of the things that have larger plants, it's probably going to work okay. And then the last thing I wanted to mention about this system here was how we plan on actually using the worm castings that are being made, hopefully, in that little plastic container there. So my plan would be, after the squash are done here, and hopefully if the worms survive there and they do eat all the scraps there and make some nice worm castings, just to pull that whole container out of the soil there, level it back out, screen out the worms, and then spread the castings over the top. Is it going to work just as perfectly as I just stated, I don't know, but that's my plan at this point. So that's what's going on in the back of the raised bed plot. Now back up here towards the front where we need to work today. These two long skinny beds right here are going to be getting cucumbers. One of these beds is going to be getting some slicing cucumbers. One of them is going to be getting some pickling cucumbers. We've already harvested some of the carrots out of this bed. So today we need to get the rest of those carrots there, and hopefully we can get some cucumbers planted in this bed. Still going to hold off a little bit on this bed over here. Probably wait another week or so before we harvest these carrots. And after we plant those cucumbers, I'll tell you a little bit more about this unit right here. But first, I want to show you something really, really cool that I noticed on these carrot plants yesterday. See that little guy right there? So based on my research, I believe this is a caterpillar of an eastern black swallowtail butterfly. I've seen the butterflies around here before, but I don't know that I've ever seen these caterpillars on any of my plants. They're really, really pretty, and they are all in this little carrot patch here. So late yesterday afternoon, I counted about 5 or 6 in this little raised bed right here. There's that big guy I showed you earlier. There's a little one right there. Bunch of them in there. What's interesting is they're not on any of the other plants in this raised bed garden. Not on the parsley, not on the parsnips over there. I did read online that they like parsnips and parsley. We don't have any dill planted. Read that they like dill as well. And they're not on those carrots over there. Just in this bed right here. Now last year we planted some fennel in one of our in-ground garden plots in an attempt to attract some of these swallowtail butterflies. For whatever reason, the fennel didn't care for our wacky winter weather, the on and off hot and cold. It never made it to this point the following year, which is good to see them on the carrots there. And I don't know if we should consider that a pest or not. I don't think they're hurting the carrot plants. Maybe if they were on some of our greens, munching on those, we might think differently about them. But I'm just happy to see them there. They're pretty, not hurting anything at this point, so we'll leave them be. Now back to the task at hand here. We need to get the rest of these carrots out of this bed. We've already harvested those over there. Need to get this other row of orange carrots out of here because we're going to plant some cucumbers here, and also because as it gets warmer, these things will kind of start getting woody and they don't taste near as good. So we're just going to get them at whatever size they're at currently. May not be the biggest carrots we've ever grown, but they'll be quite tasty. Some of those are pretty good there. Can't be mad about that. We're just gonna harvest them all. We didn't thin these. We don't ever thin our carrots. When you don't thin them, you get some big ones, you get some little ones. They're not all uniformly sized. That's okay with us. But if you want uniformly sized carrots, you probably don't want to plant them as thick as we do, or you want to thin them out. All right, so we got all our carrots here, and I'm going to go ahead and take the tops off these. That way we can get them bagged up, put them in the fridge. So we'll put our carrots in here. We'll rinse those off in a minute. We'll put the tops in our dog's bucket, see if the chickens want those. All right, so not a massive abundance of carrots from that half a raised bed, and we'll blame that on the Arctic blast and the fact that it was our first time growing carrots in this raised bed. Now I'll take the water hose and just rinse those off a little bit. Not going to scrub them, just knock the dirt off. And the key to getting carrots to store 2 or 3 weeks once you put them in the fridge is to not put them in there wet. So after we rinse them off like that, we just kind of leave them out in the sun for a few hours, let them air dry, then we'll put them in our bags here, put them in the fridge. As long as we put them in the fridge dry, we can usually get at least 2 to 3 weeks of storage out of them. So now we've got all our carrots pulled, we can get this amended and plant some cucumbers. First thing I need to do is take out these drip tape lines. 1, because I need to amend this whole area. 2, because I'm going to use drip tubing here instead of drip tape. I've started to like the tubing more in these raised beds just because they put out a little more water, don't have to run the system as long. So we'll reuse these holes where I'm pulling out these drip tape lines here. We'll just get those out of there. We can reuse them somewhere else later if we want to. Then we need to get some of this good homemade dog's compost. pour it onto this bed. And get that scratched in a little bit there. Get it mixed into the soil. Alright, so that looks pretty good there. Now we just need to get these drip tubing lines installed where we had those drip tape lines. And I've got these two pieces that were in one of those beds where we've got taters now, already cut to length, already got the fittings on them, ready to go. So we just need to snap them into these holes here, just like that. Just like that. And then I'm going to take a few of these staples here and just kind of pin it down. Now, I'm going to plant cucumbers right down the middle here. So I'm not planting right beside the tape or on top of the tape or tubing like I normally do. I'm going to plant in the middle here. These put out plenty of water. They should feed this middle where the seeds are just fine, but hoping to encourage a little more wider root development here by keeping the whole bed moist as opposed to just the area where we plant the seeds. We'll see if that works or not, but I think it will. So after that last video, we had several people sending us messages and emails asking more about our drip irrigation setup or setups here at Lazy Dog Farm. And so a couple different ways you can learn more about those. One, on our YouTube channel, we have a playlist where all our raised bed videos are. If you kind of dig back into that playlist a little bit, you'll see several videos we did when we installed our whole irrigation system here from start to finish, all the pieces we use, all that good stuff. Secondly, you can go to our website, lazydogfarm.com. There's a blogs tab at the top there. Click on the blog that says Garden Journal. We've got 3 different irrigation blogs there, I believe. One for our raised bed irrigation system, another for our in-ground irrigation system, and then another for our fig tree or fruit orchard irrigation system. All those blogs have pictures and links where you can get all this stuff. So check that out if you're interested in doing some of the irrigation like we do here. So now that we've got our bed ready, let's plant some cucumbers. And we're going to plant our pickling cucumbers today. This spring we're going with a variety called Excelsior. Never planted this variety before. There's several really good pickling cucumber varieties out there that I like. Max Pack is a really good one. Supremo is a really good one. Couldn't find Supremo, so we went with this Excelsior this year. Has a really good disease package on it, and it's parthenocarpic, which means it's really productive and doesn't require pollination. Now these parthenocarpic cucumbers, which don't need pollinators, are primarily intended for the indoor growing industry. People that grow a lot of cucumbers in these big high tunnels or greenhouses where you don't have a lot of pollinators coming inside there. But they're also useful if maybe you live in an urban area where there's not a lot of pollinators. And they can also be useful if you live out in the country like us and you have plenty of pollinators. From my experiences, these varieties are just so much more productive than varieties that need pollination. So last year we grew a parthenocarpic slicer variety called Corinto and was just amazed by the production on it. So I said, well, let's try a parthenocarpic pickling variety. That's why we're going with Excelsior. So we're just going to plant 1 row of these in this raised bed that is about, I don't know, 5 or 6 foot long. Last year we grew about a 15 to 20 foot row of those parthenocarpic slicers and was picking buckets every other day. So just 5 or 6 foot of these should be plenty. Now normally I would put some Nature Safe 855 down in this furrow here, but I got to get some more, so we're just going to go ahead and plant them. Then we'll give them some of that once we get some, hopefully this next week. So I'm just going to make me a little bitty planting furrow here right down the middle, and that's where we'll drop our seeds. Now I am taking a chance by planting these this early on the 4th of March, but that's a chance I'm willing to take. I'm going to use half my seeds here. I think I've got 30 seeds in this pack, so I'm going to use half of them right now, and I'm going to save the other half just in case we get a late frost and I'm not able to protect these things. I do have a way to cover this bed if we were to get a late frost. Hopefully we don't have any issues, and we can go ahead and get these things up and going here. So just going to try to space these out a few inches apart here. We can put them relatively close because they're going to be growing vertically. We're going to set up a trellis here in a minute. Alright, so I got 16 seeds down there, so a little more than half the pack. That's alright. Now we'll just get them covered up here, pack them down a little bit. All right, so now that we've got those pickling cucumbers planted in that long skinny raised bed there, we need to figure out what we're going to use to trellis these things, which brings me to this unit right here. So this is something else that Olle Gardens sent me when they sent me that little in-bed worm farm there. Let me pull this out of that carrot bed there so you can get a little better look at it. So this thing came in a box, and then you just kind of push all the pieces together till you get it assembled. Took about, I don't know, 5 minutes to put it together. Wasn't much to it. It's pretty tall. I'm about 6'1", and standing underneath it here, it's at least 2 foot taller than my head. So probably about 8 foot tall there. It's made out of metal. It's pretty sturdy, and you could use this a lot of different ways. You wouldn't have to put it in a raised bed. We could just stick it in this plot somewhere, just kind of make some holes in the ground and stick it down into those holes. It's meant to be stuck down in the ground there on the ends for additional support so it doesn't blow over. You could use it between 2 raised beds like this, or like we're going to use it today, inside 1 raised bed, kind of from end to end. Now I did consider just putting it on the outside of the bed like this. You can stretch it out, and that might work there. But I think it's going to be a little more sturdy, or have a little more support, if we put it inside the bed like this. So 1 end down there, 1 end right there, and we'll just push it all the way down like that. Now as it stands right there, those cucumbers on the end of that bed would have something to climb. But what about the cucumbers in the middle? Now I've considered several different things here. I thought about using a drop string technique from the top there, kind of like we do with indeterminate tomatoes. But then I got to thinking I might have an even better idea. So I think we can take some of this Hortonova trellis netting here, which we already have, and tie it to the top there, tie it to the sides, and have a nice little strong trellis. Now this stuff works pretty good for cucumbers just on T-post alone, but as the plants get loaded down and heavy, it can sag a little bit. So having it tied to the top there should prevent that.
You have me, and I have you. That's enough to paint lonesome black and blue. Yeah, I have you, and you have me. That puts a bow up in the sky that tells the rain to cease.
All right. Had to use my little camping stool, but we got her did. And I wasn't 100% positive this was going to end up looking decent, but I sure do like it when a plan comes together. Now obviously there's lots of different ways you could set up a cucumber trellis in a raised bed like this. I've got lots of different stuff under the barn I could have used, but they sent me these. I didn't have to use them, but I figured I'd try to use them because they look pretty, they look nice. And with my garden being on all these videos and being right beside the road, I do like my stuff to look kind of nice. People ride by, I like them to see a nice looking garden out here. If we live way back in the woods, probably wouldn't matter that much, but right here by the road, it is nice to have stuff that looks nice. And that netting there isn't anchored to the soil anywhere, so if we do get a late frost and I do need to cover this bed, I can just take that whole thing out of the bed there, put some hoops, put some frost protection fabric over the bed for one night, take it off, and then put this right back in place. And that's because while these cucumbers may germinate and be up and growing in just a few days, they won't be climbing by the time we get a late frost, if that happens. So that's why we can take that chance. Now the last thing we need to do out here before we call it a day is get us some groceries. I think we've got some of these beets in here that are nice and ready to pull. Some of these gold beets especially. Actually, that's a white beet. That's one of the avalanche beets. But that one there looks pretty good. Happy with that. Let's see what else we can find in here. There's a pretty gold beet. Look at that one there. Nice round beet there. That one will be tasty, roasted in the oven. There's a pretty red beet there, not quite as big as those others, but that'll work. See if I can find me a few more here. And I'll get 2 more of those orange ones there, even though they're a little smaller, just to have kind of even amounts of all colors. And then the last thing I need to get some of this beautiful spinach here. Now when we started harvesting this stuff a few weeks ago, I was just coming in here and plucking a few leaves. But now it's growing so fast with this heat, I've been harvesting it kind of a quadrant at the time. So we did a quarter of the bed the other day. That's already starting to kind of grow back. And now we're going to get this quarter of the bed. And I've just been cutting this with a knife. So just kind of grabbing a bunch, doing a clean cut there. Doesn't hurt the plants. They'll grow back just fine, as you see right there. All right, so we got that quarter of the bed cut, and then in the next few days we'll work on the rest of this. All right, so there's about 2 salads worth. And remember what I've told you before, if you want to be lean and mean, gotta eat your greens. Now we'll have to wash the pollen off these, but after I give them a rinse, put them in the salad spinner for a minute, they'll be ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed the video today, and let me know in the comments below what you think about our raised bed cucumber trellis there, and also let me know what you use for cucumber trellis, whether it be in an in-ground garden or in a raised bed. And as always, you can find links to our affiliate partners in the description below. Companies like Olle Gardens, where we got these raised beds, that worm farm, and that trellis right there. Got some coupon codes for some of those companies so you can take advantage of those discounts. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where we've got our fig trees for sale, got a few seeds for sale, our garden blog, recipes, all kind of good stuff over there. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like and share. We'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell. By the beauty of your life.